I think a lot of art just comes down to at-bats.
Totally.
And it's cheating a lot of times because what you see is you see home run compilations, but what you don't see is you don't see, no, this was 3 years of at-bats. This is the wildest story ever. The podcast paid for our movie.
But that's fucking sick that your podcast is financing your movie.
Yeah.
Freddie Wong is a YouTube OG. Back in 2010, his VFX channel attracted millions of subscribers and also Hollywood.
Woohoo!
He collaborated on videos with Jimmy Kimmel,
Half Windsor.
Key and Peele.
I don't know. Why don't you ask?
You.
And in 2011, he crowdfunded a web series called Video Game High School, which he released on YouTube over 3 seasons. For the last season, they raised $4.2 million.
Oh, damn.
Then Freddie stopped uploading altogether in 2018 to pursue projects in film and television. And his new project is called Dungeons and Daddies, which is the massively successful Dungeons and Dragons podcast. Freddie's just done it time and time again, and I couldn't wait to sit down with him and talk about how. You went through such a journey.
Yeah.
I mean, that was an insane, fast, and incredible ride. You guys were outputting, Rocket Jump was outputting.
It was one a week.
I mean,
and then we're doing our shows, and then it was a lot of, I sleep weird now.
And it seemed like at the time you were having fun up until a point. Do you miss that? Do you ever think about doing that again? What is the next couple years for you versus where you've been? I mean, it is a rare, I guess here's what I'm getting at. It's a rare thing that a creator has that much success. Mm-hmm. And then is like, all right, peace. That was fun. I'm gonna go make pops.
Yeah. Try something else. Do podcasts.
Yeah. Like what's going on?
I don't know. I think that no. I would say no. I don't want to go back and do that again. And I think that again, when I look back at the arc of my career so far, so much of it is context of the time and the place, right? And I think the thing that was strange and unique about that was because I gone straight out of film school. And I remember I joined up with living with Sam and Nico and Brandon and all those guys in our little loft at downtown and paying $250 in rent each. This was the only way we could do it because I was like, cool, I'm paying nothing for rent. And Brandon and I, we were like, okay, we can do this for a year because our rent is $250 a month, right? That's a weird freedom to be able to have, right? And I think that that's so specific to that time period because also at that time everyone was like, what are you doing YouTube stuff for? There's nothing. What do you mean? YouTube, I remember there was a weird time as it was starting to sort of pick up in the culture at large. People were like, what do we call these people? Because influencers wasn't a word yet. And I think my favorite version of it was they were like, we should call them, what about celebrities? They're web.
God.
So they're celebrities. I was like, I don't know if this one's going to stick. But what a weird time that was. And I think that I'll say this, the thing that I take from that I still think that is important is I think that what I appreciated the most from that was a approach to practice and approach to craft, which was the side effect of forcing yourself to go one a week was it allowed you to be free and experimenting on things. Because if it was bad this week, it's fine. Next week we're doing something else. And I think that that is the most important lesson that I took away from that was if you don't just recklessly experiment and just try new things and are trying to just go different directions, if you're not doing that, I think it's very bad. I think that you stagnate. And I over and over again, I remember especially talking to people from that era and the number of YouTube channels, even at that time, there were people who were tired of doing their thing. Talking to some of these guys, I won't name names, but some of these guys were just yeah, it's just a grind. Even at that time, right? Let alone now looking back at it, it's at that time, actively, they're I gotta put out this number of videos a week and I gotta do this. And then, there was always the dilemma, this exact same thing you were talking about, with the dilemma of well, what am I supposed to do? My audience likes this one, I wanna try something else. But I was so early on, Brad and I were we have to just make it our thing as us doing different things. Because if you don't do it that way, then you fall into well, then this is exactly what they expect.
And there's, what you said about the lack of preciousness because the volume is so high. Yeah. I will say my favorite thing about the Scary Pockets channel, because we're doing new music video every week.
Yeah.
It's a lot of music that comes out. And it does feel like a grind sometimes. Now we've batched production, so we do 4 in a single day, and then don't do it for a month because
Yeah,
I'm working
yeah.
on Patreon, and then they kind of come out one a
Yeah,
week.
yeah.
So it's a little different than like
The seat of your pants, like
one a week editing until 1 a.m.
See, that was
putting out.
wild because what it was when you're in your seat of your pants like that, it's like literally like Monday. There's the pressure is different.
Yes, it
because when
is.
you do 4, you could be like, okay, we got all 4. Okay, we can relax a little bit.
And then you relax, and then you're
But
done
there's
for a
a
month.
pressure because it was that was honestly the most fun part of it was to be like you'd be done, you get one day where you get sleep, rest, and then Tuesday came and be like, what are we doing?
Straight in.
Well, we gotta go. You
But
know?
the effect that it does have, at least on me, was the same effect that it sounded like it had on you, which is when we're making these videos now, we're like, it's one a week. Let's try something new.
Yeah, try something different.
There's zero preciousness.
Yeah.
We're all just, if somebody messes up a lyric, who cares? If we're out of sync for a second or it's a little wonky, it's fine. Like that's rock and roll. That's we embrace that and it's part of the process.
Yeah.
And what we always, so Ryan and I, one of the things that we always talk about with each other is like, the Beatles famously were in Hamburg.
Yeah, right. This is their Hamburg
6
era.
nights a week working on arrangements. That's a lot of at-bats for performers.
It just comes down to at-bats.
And-
I think I think a lot of art just comes down to at-bats.
Totally.
And it's cheating a lot of times because what you see home run compilations, but what you don't see is no, this was 3 years of at-bats or 5 years of at-bats.
6 nights a week.
Yeah.
Right.
I 100%. Even though I don't want to compare myself to the Beatles, but like when I think about the YouTube era and I sort of contextualize a place in my life, it feels like that sort of thing for me, where it was like this was the period where, from a filmmaking perspective, I was throughout my 20s recklessly experimental, and I think that's something that I'm very proud of in terms of the work that we did. I remember it was very hard to pin down exactly what the heck we were doing, right? It's like broadly, it's like visual effects and comedy, sort of, and action, sort of, but not always, and kind of music sometimes.
Take a moment to figure out who's double-crossing themselves while dressed as each other, okay? Does that sound good?
When you look at even like Video Game High School, right? Each season we were like, all right, the first season we were like, let's treat it as a movie. The second season we're like, all right, let's do a 22-minute sitcom now. We're doing it as a 22. And then the third season we're like, Prestige TV, we're doing 40-minute seasons. And like that's wild. I can't think of a show that was like, hey, by the way, like, it's like Game of Thrones isn't like, hey, next season is 30-minute episodes. Like, wait, what are you talking about? It's this format. So we were able to even play around with format. And it was, to me, I felt like I learned the most doing it that way because you're touching it, you're constantly working it.
And it's not only touching the craft,
Yeah.
which is I think my favorite thing about just ongoing creation. There are problems with serialized creation, by the way.
Yes,
I think now creation is all serialized, which is like,
Well, it's
is that the way
formats.
creation
It's all
is supposed-
formats
It's all
and
formats
serial. Yeah,
because it's
exactly.
video
'Cause you
driven.
gotta
which is
find the thing
exactly
that you can repeat.
and then you
Yeah.
stick to that thing. You deviate a little bit. You learn outside of it. But there are problems with that. But I will say one of the things I love about it is like you don't just learn from having to have so many at-bats, but every at-bat is published.
Yes.
And so you learn how people react to
There's
it. You
more of a
read the
dialogue.
comments.
Yes, there's more of a dialogue with the audience.
Yeah, and so
the challenge, by the way, I think becomes how much you pay attention to that dialogue.
Exactly.
Right?
And what you pay attention to and what you don't.
Yes.
Because if you're not careful, you can just, there's this famous quote by Jeff Lawson, who's the CEO of Twilio. He was like, you got to be careful. Tech companies have to be careful because you can A/B test your way to becoming a porn site. Which is like, if you just put up A/B tests, it just leads you to porn. Because it's like at the core of what humans want, they want porn. So like tech companies have to be
great.
careful when you listen to data. Creators are the same way.
Yes,
If you
100%.
just read all the comments and respond to likes and views
No,
and everything.
I
you
think
can
that I
just-
see so many people make that mistake specifically, which is they don't know, because it's a new social sort of paradigm that we're in, they don't know how to contextualize what they're getting. I remember when we were doing Dungeons and Daddies and we started to like pick up, Matt, Will, and I, and like, and some people with different varying levels of experience with being like internet famous, right? And it was like seeing stuff happen and being like, oh, hey, hold on. I know that this Reddit post where this person goes off, it's like, you need to understand what the context of this data is. You need to pull, like, this guy saying that your podcast is like way dumber than his friends and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, but like, you need to contextualize that, also know what the metrics are. You need to pull in all of these sources of data before you kind of like form an opinion. And it was a learning process, I think, for a lot of our team, which was like over time to be like, oh, okay, so when this goes off and this is like, oh no, Tumblr doesn't like this one thing we did. And it was like, that just means Tumblr doesn't like the one thing you did. And that specific subsect of Tumblr is not the same as the old podcast listening audience. You need to acknowledge also that like the mere act of commenting is already 10 degrees of activation energy beyond what everyone else does. Because I was like, listen, when's the last time you like posted on like your blog about a TV show? Like, I've never done that. Like, right. Most people are probably just like us, where it's like you're just using it, you're just listening to it. That's it, which is fine. But it also means, but you have to contextualize it. You have to be like, okay, well, we're not hearing from those people either. So how can we infer sort of what they're feeling? It's very complicated, and it's also one of those. Yeah, it's one of those things where we don't really have any experience because it's a new thing.
It's a very new thing. Like for me, it's a wonder that anybody creates anything on the internet at all. Like when you hear what you just said,
exactly,
because like you have to parse through all this data and determine like, do I listen to this or not, or should I take this feedback or not, and is this overlapping with what I want to do, or actually I don't care about this, so I'm just going to keep doing my thing. But actually, there's a nugget of truth in it somewhere because I did feel a little bit like I was kind of a jerk.
Maybe,
And there's so many things like that, and to expect a human to be able to just by themselves, by the way, like most creators don't have
by themselves and come out of it with a clean sort of mental like picture of what's going on
and mental health at the same time.
Impossible.
Like, and I'm 12 hours a day in front of After Effects or whatever by myself. Forget it. That is an impossiable task. It's amazing to me that anybody can come out the other end of that.
I mean, I would say that's why you see so many people burn out.
Yeah.
Like I think that it's pernicious in that there is negative side effects, but it's invisible because the people who burn out from it just disappear. Right? Or they quit before they even get to a point where they can even they get discouraged by that or what have you. And I think that's like maybe the hardest thing right now, which is why I think my advice to people asking about like, hey, if I want to start a thing, how do I do it? The only advice I can give there is like, look, all my hacks, all my tricks and stuff, out of date. The principles may be the same in terms of like, oh, think about how you can reach people outside or ancillary groups of people. Where are they? But like,
so this is
you can't.
Here's
you have to just do it for yourself.
Here's the crux of I think where we're coming to as a culture and where creation I think is winding up, which is that media is becoming serialized, format driven.
Yeah.
Right? Like I have a channel, it's the same thing, it's what my audience expects. I grind on it, it's daily, it's weekly, it's whatever, and it's without pause. It's like trying to imitate television. It's trying to imitate a brand. It's trying to imitate a company. The thing is, humans are not companies.
Right.
And now we're having to, quote unquote, compete with companies or act like companies. And it's causing this burnout and all these problems. And, we have to basically output beyond what humans can healthfully output. And it is really tough. So,
by the way, tougher on some platforms than others too, right?
Very much
when I think about Twitch is to me like the hardest one because everyone's
the grindiest
competing.
grind.
Yeah, because everyone's competing for real-time time.
Yes.
Whereas like YouTube, it was like, cool, we can make a video, but like, hey, in a year someone might find it and become a fan of us. Cool, that can just be out there doing its thing. Whereas it's like, no, you need to be on. Ninja can't take a vacation, right? Because he loses millions, right? Well, it's ridiculous.
And also performance for 40 hours a week is very different than production for 40 hours a week, right? When I'm like acting like how I want my audience to act for that much of my waking life, of my conscious life.
You heard about the sleep thing?
No.
I've been hearing this, the rumors in the Twitch world.
Okay.
I've heard it from a few people who they're like, you have trouble falling asleep? Like, yeah, I have trouble falling asleep because they're on all day, every day. And they're like, yeah, I like multiple Twitch guys would be like, yeah, I lay in bed and I just kind of can't fall asleep for like an hour because I'm still in like an active like presentational mode and it takes me a second to get out of it. It's like, but it's hard because every single day I'm back in that mode for most of the day.
It's very unnatural. So here's what's happening, I think, is online creation is not so slowly becoming a team sport because it is format driven, because it is episodic in nature. It's almost incompatible with human nature, right? Humans are chaotic. They want breaks. We need a little time. We need to fucking recharge for a month.
You might be off for a while.
Like your family gets sick and you need to go hang with your family for 3 months. Like this is the antithesis of serialization, right? It's incompatible with serialization.
Right.
And so creation is becoming, even online creation is becoming, it requires a team.
Yeah.
And so I guess I would love to talk with you about team creation. And now the thing that you're, I think, going to point out is there is also an incompatibility.
There's a real problem. Okay, so I think this is what you're thinking because I'm thinking the same thing, which is because we've had to build teams for stuff that we've done. There's the
for what?
For like our YouTube channel, finding out,
Rocket Jump
for Dungeons and Daddies. at the core of the problem is this: anybody who is good at what that is is 1,000 times more incentivized to just do it for themselves. like that's to me. Is this what you're thinking about, or is this like different?
I was thinking about a different tension, but that's
like the biggest tension to me,
Okay.
which is that specifically anybody, if you find someone who's like a good shooter editor type, at some point, if they're really truly good, they can do it themselves because that's the nature of everything we're doing. Everything is kind of like self-starter stuff like that. So, and to me, it's like, weirdly enough, the people who then like don't want to go do it for themselves, you're just like, yeah, but what's going on? Like, right, you're a little bit like, but like you could though, and wouldn't it be better for? And we've had people who are like, have gone on to do their own channels and stuff like that, and they've gone and become incredibly successful with their stuff. And to me, the tension there is that it's tough finding people because at the end of the day,
that's why I have to hold on to these guys so tight. I don't want them to go anywhere.
But I think you just have to. But I think you just have. I think at a certain point you have to just be like, yeah, that's just part of it. There's going to be people are going to go off and do their own thing, and so you're going to look for people and you're going to bring them up a little bit. Like, so that's kind of where we've ended. What was the tension you were thinking about?
The hard part for me is when you're with a team.
Yeah.
The idea of self-expression
in a group setting is
in
bizarre.
a group setting.
Yeah.
There's just so much tension there, and I found it's better if the idea is, well, let's all express an idea together.
Yeah.
And we'll draw on everybody's creativity. And I think it can be like that sometimes. But also sometimes my goal as a creator is like true self-expression.
Yeah, that you need help on.
And I need help with that.
What's tough is it's dictatorships versus democracy.
And that is the natural tension that I don't feel ever like I'm an expert at that. I feel like it's a constant learning process.
Yeah, I think each of those is about. I'm very happy with where we are with our podcast. Right, I think our podcast is really about as close to a creative democracy that we've managed to.
How so?
Well, I think it's because everybody brings something wildly different to the table. And part of it is the format of the podcast, right? The format of Dungeons and Daddies, the format of it is we play Dungeons and Dragons, and everyone plays a character, and our friend Anthony is the DM, and everyone's playing, our first season, everyone played dads. Our second season, everyone's playing teenagers. But, like, we have, weirdly enough, our own sort of fiefdoms of our characters, right? Like, I get to say what my character is, and that's sort of my world there. And the art then comes from the clash of these individual kingdoms and being like, wow, these two people don't get along, or these two people get along swimmingly, and the sort of combinatrix that come from that. But that one very much is one where, like, I think from the beginning we were like, the way we do it is very strange because people are like, oh, you guys talk about like where the season's going, or like, Matt and I have a very similar sort of feeling about it. We're just like, literally, I don't even want to think about the show until I'm recording it because I want to react to what our DM is bringing to the table, and like we'll throw things at him and be like, hey, I would like this for my character and stuff like that, and he literally will just be like, okay, cool. Will he integrate it? I don't know. And if he doesn't, not a big deal. I'm just sort of throwing things out there to kind of give him ammunition. But like, there's been plenty of stuff, even in the first season, where it's like, oh, it would be cool if this character did this, and we always had to be like careful of not scripting it out too much because I think there's a certain degree of and inherent in the show is there's a chaoticness to it, right? There's a chaos in Dungeons & Dragons, if you ever play Dungeons & Dragons, like where wild stuff can happen because the dice can push you in certain directions. I think you have to embrace, you either are going to be like, we are this brand and this is what we're going to be. I think like, for example, like the Try Guys are that, right? Like they're very specific, like this is our brand and this is kind of stuff that we do, and they've found, or even Good Mythical Morning, right?
Yeah.
Rhett and Link, they have these kingdoms, these fiefdoms of their audience that they've found, and this is their thing.
Is the Dungeons and Daddies team? I'm curious what that team is like. Is it just the folks that are
so it's
that
the
are
five
playing
of
the
us
game?
who are playing the game,
And then who else?
and then so for the first season it was essentially that plus a little bit of help for like merch and stuff like that.
And did you guys do all the posts and all of
I
the
was doing all
editing?
the posts for the
You were
first
doing
season,
all that.
yeah.
Okay.
Second season we then expanded out, and we have two editors, and both of them, like Esther, who's our lead editor, she's huge into podcasts. Like when I first started the show, I asked her about like, oh hey, what do you think about this and this, and like and just great advice for us.
How did you find Esther?
Friend of a friend.
Friend of a friend.
Yeah, who was super into podcasts and super
Is Esther local in LA?
In LA, yeah.
In LA, okay.
At the time, just roommates with Beth, one
Okay.
of the other people
Yeah.
on the show, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, but it was but a person who was really into podcasts, really into audio design and stuff like that,
When you
and was
hired-
doing their own thing as well.
Oh, was doing their own thing.
Yeah,
as well.
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. When you hired her, did you have a sense, like, was there an interview process? Did you just hear her podcast and be like, oh, you've got a
Basically
sense of
that.
narrative,
Yeah,
you're really
basically
good,
that.
just come in and
Yeah,
and
basically
edit for us.
that. Shadow me for a little bit, but you know what you're doing and
Okay.
go for it, right?
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And do you listen to episodes that Esther has produced?
Yeah.
Before they come out?
Yeah, so there's like a note process.
There
just
is.
Yeah, and again, it's not a huge notes process. It's just like it's tiny stuff. It's like, oh, hey, music cue here. Maybe you should start a little earlier, or like, oh, let's lose some of this bit here because it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. It's like that. It's broad, I think that, and there's a lot of discretion that I'm like, hey, go for it.
Who gives the editing notes? Everybody or just you?
Mostly me, and then depending on, because the way that the show works, there's characters have are sometimes at the focus, they're highlights, so the people who are playing those characters might be like, oh, change this because actually I want to do this instead. So there's like little gameplay type of tweaks in terms of what people want to do with their characters that occasionally show up. But for the most part, there's a lot of autonomy.
And so there's 2 editors and who else?
Producer who's handling all the various, hey, here's how we're doing merch. Oh, hey, how ad reads and all that stuff. And then we have a social community manager. And I think, honestly, the hardest job right now
Agreed.
in the world. A good social community manager is so difficult to
What?
find.
So what
Because
is
there's-
what is the strategy there? What is the social
I
content?
asked around as much. Oh, in terms of what we're putting out?
Yeah, what are you putting out?
So to me, I've always thought about social media as there's sort of like 2 things you can then do. You can either, and this was a philosophy that Brand and I had even from the YouTube days, which is you're either casting out to try and find new people with your thing, or you're playing to the audience that's already there. And you have to do both. You can't just be like, cool, we're just going to pander and hit our audience and that's it. And you also can't just constantly be like, hey, we're trying to find new people, doing this stuff to kind of try and find new people. You have to kind of have a blend of both. So that's what it is. So in terms of it depends on where you are at. So like Discord, obviously, that's your the Patreon Discord that we have. That's all the people who are already subscribed to our Patreon. That's a very different tone than like, hey, our Twitter. There's a funny meme coming out. Let's take that meme and put our characters into it, and now that's just a broader kind of thing. We like to highlight fan art a lot on the stuff because, again, it's a visual medium. Visuals is I think the hardest part of podcasts is that there are no visuals for podcasts, and all the answers to it kind of suck. Like, oh, it's a waveform, and you can see it's like, come on, it's no one's. What has worked, by the way, I think it's on TikTok, is when you see the stand-up. It's a subsect. I think I call it stand-up comedian TikTok, which is, it's a joke, it's a setup, it's a 30 to 1 minute clip, and you see it all the time where it's like someone, you see the 2 people on the mic, it cuts back and forth, and it's like a funny thing, a funny highlight, but that requires you to be recording video the whole time to generate.
And are you?
We don't.
Why not?
I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that I know exactly how much extra work it is, and also I think that the way we edit the podcast is we try to be as respectful as. But one of the things that before I even started Dungeons and Daddies, I was like, I need to listen to as many of these D&D podcasts as possible, because in my opinion, and I don't think everyone shares this, but in my opinion, it's important to hate things as well as love them, and I'll get into why in a second here. Because if you just love something, then you just take it in and you love it. But if you hate stuff too, you'll fix it. You'll fix things that you're like, this, I love Dungeons and Dragons podcast. A lot of things I hate. And so as a result, when we do ours, and we're like, okay, this thing that this show does is great, but this other thing they do, actually, I think is distracting. And so we're going to do this instead. You start to be able to shape your thing based on what you don't like. And I think it's important to have things that you don't like.
That's taste. You're describing taste.
Yeah. But hate
yes.
needs to be. It's not like I don't prefer. You gotta hate stuff too. Sometimes I think hate is very important. Hate makes you better if you use it in the right way. But for Dungeons and Daddies, there was all these things before we started where it's like, okay, we're gonna edit it down to be like, we're gonna change the way. Small example, right? In combat roles, an interaction you hear all the time is a monster attacks, the DM rolls a dice, and then the DM says, It's a 18. Does that beat your AC? The person looks on their character sheet. Yes, it does. Okay, cool. It hits you. Like, you don't need that. The DM should know. And as an audience, I'm like, cool. I rolled the dice. A number's there. Did it hit or not? That's all I'm really caring about. So, we do a lot of that type of editing to get rid of, because, I think Dungeons & Dragons, playing it is different than listening to it. And listening to it, there's different things that you're paying attention to.
Oh, that's so smart.
So, like, there's other stuff where it's like, I don't care what the number, I can't, there's no tension to be like, ugh. Sometimes there is tension, and in the times where there is tension, okay, yeah, let's leave that in there. But other times, if there's no tension, it's like, I rolled a 10, is that going to beat you? It's like, no, probably not. Like, well, then who cares? Just lose all of it. Then just go straight to they roll, and like, it misses, and then you go on. So we do a lot of that kind of editing to keep things moving quickly through it. And, I think that, the audiences respond well to it. People are like, oh, I really like it because it gets through combat really fast. It's not a slog. Sometimes combat especially can be a slog because there's so much like technical stuff and dice rolling and things like that. But that's the kind of, that kind of thing is harder with video now, because all of a sudden if you're cutting within the phrases, it's not a chat show. If it's all of a sudden like, here's the phrase and we're taking this part out, this part out, this part out because of the gameplay, you're just cutting away.
It's just jump cuts.
You're constantly,
it's
right? So it's like, it doesn't quite work as well. I think there's still a way to do it. As we've gotten better with the game, I think we're smoother and we're starting to even self-edit ourselves a little bit to be like, cool. I think everybody, for example, says less uhs and ums than they did when we started, because that's just, as a nature of practice, you get there. So I think, I'm open to doing video. I still want to try doing video stuff. And we've done like, when we do live shows and stuff like that, we'll record it and do a video side of it. And it still works, but it's just different, right?
Is Dungeons and Daddies your creative focus right now?
Yeah, right now it's split between Dungeons and Daddies and the movie that Matt and I just finished, because we realized that we were like, we wanted to make movies. It's it's hard to make movies, and we don't, unfortunately, have extremely wealthy parents to pay for our movies, which, like, secretly, by the way, the more we found out about this, the more, like, a lot of indie films, you're just like, oh yeah, that so-and-so's dad or so-and-so's mom. You're like, oh, well, we don't have that. Well, I guess we do have this podcast. So this is the wildest story ever. The podcast and the Patreon paid for our movie. So we did our indie movie, and again, it's not a big, expensive movie, but it was like, it should tell you how difficult it is to make a movie, that you need to have, like, a very, very popular podcast. In order to do an indie movie, it's
That's
like either
amazing.
rich parents or like a pretty successful podcast.
But that's fucking sick that your podcast is financing your movie.
Yeah, so the movie is called We're All Gonna Die. It's a sci-fi road trip movie, because it was like in the middle of the pandemic, and we were just like, Matt and I were losing our minds. We're just like, what I would want to do? I was like, there's two types of movies that are cheap. There's one location movies, and we had written like 3 one location movies at this point. It was going nowhere. Like, however, there's a second type of movie, the Easy Rider method, the no location movie, where it's just like, cool, here's the scene. It can happen basically anywhere as long as it's kind of like here and kind of outside. And we're like, that's another cheap type of movie. Let's do a no location movie. So we wrote like a road trip sci-fi movie.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see it.
And not super duper expensive, not crazy, but small scale indie thing that we shot, and yeah, we're finishing it up right now and gonna do the film thing, because at the end of the day, like, right, I always say you don't get to pick what weird dream you grew up with as a kid. I grew up watching Blockbuster video and movies and loving movies. I just want to do movies, I think people are like, well, you don't want to be an influencer? I was like, bro, when I started, there wasn't a thing. Now, I mean, I remember I would go back to USC and I would do these like talks with the students, and like it was literally 1 year, hey, talking to the freshman incoming class, like, what do you guys want to do? And everyone's like, I want to do a film. I want to go into festivals. The next year,
everybody
what do you
wants
guys
to be a
do?
YouTuber.
I want a YouTuber. I want to start a channel. I was like, whoa. The last year, literally, it was just
what year was it?
It was like 2015, somewhere in there.
Sounds
it was
about
like
right.
all of a sudden, it was just like every film student wanted to be a brand, and
I
they
mean,
wanted to be
honestly,
an influencer.
dude, I feel like you probably had a massive impact on that. Right?
Here's,
It's like
do you know what I feel?
USC
Do you know what
film
I feel
grad.
like? Do you know what I feel like? Honestly, I feel like okay. So the Beatles, right? Huge. I don't feel like the Beatles. I feel like when people talk about the Beatles and they say, when they first started, they were influenced by these bands, like, and then they name some like band you've never heard of, but you're like, this band was very influential. And you talk to music people, they're like, yeah, those were hugely influential in terms of early rock music. I feel like that band, and I feel like the current generation were the people who are like, are going and are doing crazy, wild, new, different things that I'm like, there's the thing that's like gonna change.
And you're their influence.
But at the same time, it's like we're also like essentially a footnote to the story of the bigger, the bigger bands are gonna go. But then there's like, if you go in the back And you see, oh yeah, there's these guys, which I have no problem with. I'm very happy with that.
When is the movie going to be done? When
We're going to be done this year, and we're going to do the festivals early next year, 2023. Is it 2023? God, years disappeared
Yeah.
on us. Yeah, so we're going to try and go festivals, do it around, and we'll see where it goes. And then here's the best part: if no one likes it, we'll just make another one. We'll just keep doing it until, because at the end, and we had such a fun time doing it. It was like, oh yeah, this is kind of why I'm friends with everyone in the first place, was we all wanted to make movies, you know. And so that's, you know, I think I'm cursed to try and pursue that, regardless of how weird and strange that process is.
Well, weird and strange is the name of the game, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Fuck yeah. Well, thank you for hanging and coming up and talking.
Yeah,
This is
thanks
really
so
fun.
much. Yeah.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you, man.